Expect Vanguard YouTubers to create 15-minute long videos speculating on who will be returning as a grade 4 unit.
A few moments later.
Challenge accepted. Let's talk about that.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, today I want to do a speculation and my predictions for the upcoming Premium Collection set, as that's basically the whole trend right now for everybody that's doing videos. Basically what I want to do today is to speculate about the potential cards that are going to be the new Stride unit, as well as some new concept for these new Stride units or cards that are going to be in this set and how they might work. I'm not going to go over each and every individual skill of every card, as if I'm going to do that, we'll be here all day. The information that we already got in this set is that every clan is going to get a Stride unit, and that's probably going to be the triple R, as since we're also going to get a support unit, and that might be the double R. And we already saw the artwork of 4 cards of 4 different clans. We saw History Maker for Gear Chronicle, we saw Katrina for Neo Nectar, we saw Morfessa for Shadow Paladin, and we saw Final Dime Max for Dimension Police. What we can tell with the release of these cards and the fact that they're G units, these new G units are probably gonna be holding at some criterias, and are all probably gonna be very G related specific support cards of those decks. So cards that were very important at the time of the mid-G era, as History Maker was very important. Katrina was a very vital card for the Bloom build for the longest of time. But what these reveals also tells us is that the certain grade doesn't reflect anything concerning the new G unit. It can be a grade 1, it can be a grade 2, it can be a previous G unit. So it can be anything as long as it's probably gonna be a card that was relevant during the G era. Also, what I'm gonna add on those criteria is that probably most of them are going to be key unit specific. So they're gonna be of the new archetype. So even though blasters got support during the year, probably they aren't gonna get one. So with all of these criteria in place, let's go over each and every clan and with my personal pick on those cards. Alright, we start off with Royal Paladin. Royal Paladin should be very easy, as we already have a Gancelot Stride, we got an Alfred Stride, we got a Soul Saver Stride, we got multiple Altma Strides and all these generic Dragon Strides. So basically the only thing that we miss is Blaster Blade, right? So yeah, that was my original pick for this clan, but then I thought about it. Well, it's not a card that came in the G era, it was an already old existing card that's very relevant at the time. So then I thought, well, was there a newer card for that build that was very prevalent in the build? Yes, the new Lu grade 2 card. That could be the new G unit. But then still it's not the new archetype of Royal Paladin, as that is a Brave. So if we go to that concept, my personal pick would then be Slayman. As Slayman was very vital for the Brave build, as it was basically in any build ever since its conception, as it was a vital card to do those insane combo plays. So a Slayman Stride G unit might be in for us with this set. Next up for Oracle Think Tank, this was a hard one, as most Oracle Think Tank cards for the Oracle archetype aren't really that very important or that very prevalent throughout their decks design. Yeah, we have Susanoo, but Susanoo already got multiple Stride cards, and besides that there isn't really a lot to pick from. But then when you think about it, when you think about Oracle in Oracle Think Tank, there's basically one card that everybody thinks about, and that is Ichikishima. So maybe we get a new version of Ichikishima. I know that a lot of people not like that idea, but it's the only one that comes to mind when I think about a very iconic and prevalent unit for Oracle Think Tank with their Oracle build. On Angel Feathers, you can go multiple ways, but it's probably gonna be in the ballpark of the grade 2s that are very good with how Gabrielle worked at the time. And the most iconic and most annoying for most people is Nurse of Broken Heart. So my bet is maybe on the Nurse of Broken Heart G unit, and it's probably gonna be something in the ballpark of multiple rescue checks, or again multiple power gains throughout the battle phase, maybe main phase, something in that sense. as that is really Nurse of Broken Heart typical-esque like. Shadow Paladin we already know, that's more Fessa, and it makes sense as this was one of the vital key pieces in the beginning of the ritual deck, and even in the later ritual build can still be used. Then for Gold Paladin, this was a really a more hard one, as we've got a lot of iconic cards, but at the same time not really that prevalent, as Gold Paladin was on a very equal footing with all the cards, so basically all do the same thing. But then I thought about a G unit, and there is one iconic card, except for the Gurgits, because I didn't want to have another Gurgit card. And then I think about Golden Dragon, Glorious Reigning Dragon. That thing was a beast at the time, and still is. And I think this is a good pick with my new game concept, the game design that could be introduced in this set, but I'm gonna go over that at the later in the video. But this is one of those perfect cards that will synergize perfectly with it. Then for Genesis, my personal pick is going to be Amaruda, as we already have a lot of Fenrir cards, and the Fenrir support cards on themselves aren't really that iconic in my personal opinion. But the whole Amaruda build, it's the newer set, as well as a very interesting concept that they didn't really build upon with future set, as it was basically the last Genesis support they got, except for the one that was focusing on the Regalia set. Then in the same style for Kagero, I'm personally picking for Ziegenberg, as yes, you can go for the Overlord, but again, Overlord is more from the old era, and when I think about the new era, the G era, then it's either Blade Master, but we already got a Blade Master Stride. And when you think about an iconic stride card or iconic unit that was very prevalent in Kagero, then Ziegenberg definitely come to mind. What also can happen is that we maybe get a Dumjit Stride, as that was hinted in the past before. Maybe we get a Dumjit Stride, maybe we get a second Ziegenberg. Either way, looks really awesome in my honest opinion. Then for Nubatama, I'm not really that familiar with the two ninja clans, and another Shiranui Stride, I'm not really seeing that, and I'm more on hints on the dominate aspect than on the whole afterimage aspect. And for the dominate cards, I think Furai is the more prevalent one, the more iconic among the grade 2, grade 1 support cards, as it was in the first initial support wave for Dominate. So my personal pick is going to Furai, as it makes also a very nice card art design for his Stride card. Then for Tachikaze, once again, not really that familiar with Tachikaze, but when I think about Tachikaze and not at Gaia at the same time, then the only card that comes to mind is Dogma. And I think a new Dogma might be a good spot to be on. So I think a second Dogma that is more situational or more better as a first target to go into and then Dogma, or maybe the first you go into old Dogma and then into the new Dogma, depending on how the skill is going to be interacting. So I think a new Dogma would be really a great option, as well as it's a very iconic card for Tachikaze, as it was the go-to stride for most builds. Then for Murukuma, again, not really that familiar, but whenever I hear about the Murukuma player talking about anything, they always talk about one card, and that was Stealth Rogue of Concealment Tamba. It might not be really that prevalent for us in the West, as since this card came way too late, but in Japan had plenty of time with this card, and this card was very important in all kinds of loops in the Shadow Stitch build and with all these crazy interaction and combos. So maybe a Tamba Stride might be in it for this time. Next up for Narukami, well, as a Narukami player, there was immediately one card that came to mind, and that was Demonic Dragon Berserker Chatura. And to be honest, a Chatura Stride, I would be down for that immediately. I don't think we need another Voltage Stride or basically another Vanquisher Stride, as we got many and plenty. But again, it might not be in the Thunderstrike build, but it is a great Thunderstrike support card, and it was a key vital card for the deck ever since that card came out. So I think Chatura is a very solid pick for Narukami. Then for Nova Grappler, this was a hard one, as I'm nowhere near a Nova Grappler player. I know some people that play it, but I cannot come up with, on top of my head, with a very good iconic card that might be a good new G unit. So I went with the same steps as I did for Gold Paladin, and then with the first card that came into mind of the Stride card was Favorite Champ Victor. And I think a new version of Favorite Champ Victor might be plausible, as Favorite Champ Victor is basically in the same ballpark as Dogma, as when you can go into the thing, you're gonna go into the thing. There is basically no better option. This is your best finisher in most builds, or the GB8 if you can go towards the GB8. but maybe a new favorite champ Victor can maybe compete with winning champ. Well, for Dimension Police we already know we get a golden version of Final Dimax, so that skill is probably gonna be with a lot of crits and power, as the previous one was in the same ballpark, and I think it's gonna be somewhere in the same ballpark as that one, but probably in a different skill, maybe a better first stride or a better later game stride. Then for Link Joker, again, we knew already that it was Glue Ball Dragon. What it's gonna do? Probably luck, but we're not that sure if it's gonna do that, but I'm hinging more on the part that it's probably gonna be a locking type mechanic. Then for Spike Brothers. Whenever I think of Spike Brothers, I immediately think of one card, and that is Mayhem Tiger. So I'm betting my ass that they're gonna be a Mayhem Tiger stride unit. And I think Spike Brother players might be in it for that, as if it gets anywhere near the same skills as the grade 2 had, that can be really scary on a Vanguard attack. So yeah, very curious if we're gonna get a Mayhem Tiger stride. Then for Dark Regulars, again, there are some interesting options, but I went with a more controversial pick, as I hope for a Gastille stride. As Gastille itself was really hyped up during the anime, that's the introduction, and then it was such a letdown on itself. The card is okay, it has some good potential, but currently there aren't really that great of multiple options you're gonna do. But I think a Gastille stride might be really awesome to have. Then for Pale Moon, if I'm gonna go with the Magia build, then there is one card that I think fits the bill perfectly, as it's a great support card. And I think a stride version of Cutie Paratrooper might do the trick. I think that's could be really awesome to have a Cutie Paratrooper stride in combination with all the Harry support that we already got. So then for Gear Chronicle, we already know it's going to be History Maker Dragon. I honestly would not have guessed that this would be the case, but I'm very happy that it is. And also with History Maker Dragon, as well as the Glorious Reigning Dragon, their skill might be in it with this new mechanic that I have in mind. But probably, as most people are already predicting, it's going to be an unattack time leap something, or time leap a certain amount of cards. Maybe it gains effect if rear guards are time leaping, as seen as you already have a rear guard time leap skills. So maybe for every time leap that happens, it's gain power or a crit or whatever. So it might be in that ballpark as well. Then for Grand Blue, again a hard pick, as I'm not really that a Grand Blue main focus player. In this case, I'm gonna go for Gold Dragon, Gas Dragon. Might be a little bit weird, but when I played against Grand Blue a lot of the time, this was one of those cards that made the real impact against me. As one, its design is really awesome, the way that it plays is really awesome. I know there are probably gonna be more iconic cards, like Gauss, for example, is also a good pick to have a second Gauss stride. But I think a Ghost Dragon stride would be really cool, as that artwork really fits well on a stride unit. This was a really hard one, as Bermuda Triangle has so many cards to go from. But I'm gonna go with my personal pick, as I'm really fan of the Harmony Loris build, but sadly that build is not strong and it lacks support. So I'm gonna go for a second stride of Celebrate Voice Loris, so a new Loris stride card, and hopefully this will help the build go up a notch. For Aqua Force, you're probably gonna think immediately of Tidal Assault, but then again, that's an old card, and I think these G units are gonna be more supporting of the new archetypes. So I'm gonna go with Battle Siren Adelaide, as that was again a key vital card just like Tidal Assault, but this was more of the newer version. So maybe we get an Adelaide stride for Aqua Force. Then for Mega Conley, this is basically a guess in the dark, as I have no clue for Mega Conley what a good pick is. I'm go with Vulcan Leverte, as one, it was a card that's used a lot in the earlier builds. Probably not as much as currently, but it's more on the Ghidorah and the Darkface strides. But as since we already have a lot of Darkface strides, and Overwhelm is basically Ghidorah, so I'm not gonna choose those cards. So I'm gonna go with this one, as its artwork also makes a great stride unit option to make some really good card design. Then for Great Nature, this one was very easy. When I thought about Great Nature, instantly this card came to mind, Crayon Tiger. I mean, if there is any more iconic card for Great Nature, then there's this card. I mean, it was the card that everybody needed. It was the card that everybody runned, and whenever a new card that could basically do the same, it was stated as, oh, that is a grade 3 Crayon Tiger or a grade 1 Crayon Tiger, it was always compared to Crayon Tiger. So a Crayon Tiger Stride might be the case. Then for New Nectar, we already know that is Katrina, and there's probably going to be a lot of bloom, 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 and bloom. And with that, we basically conclude every card that I am guessing that's going to be a Stride card version. When we go back to the History Maker and the Glorious Rain Dragon, the reason why I went for the more G cards and the more G support archetypes is that with whole standard and premium, we now know that standard cards, so the older cards, are getting support with standard itself. So Blaster, the Blaster archetype is getting support with all the Elford and Blaster Blade support, and they have access to these Force markers, Axle markers, and Protect markers. All these G archetypes like Time Leap, Brave, Thunderstrike, Blaze, they don't have access to these gift markers and these acceleration mechanics, as their Great Freeze and all their main cards that they need to ride and stride into don't have those markers themselves. And Time Leap itself is really in an awkward spot, as their whole engine was around Melon, that it hits for 11k, and with these new base powers of 12 and 13, it doesn't do anything. And that makes it really a little bit hard if History Maker is going to be in Time Leap Stride. Well, it's probably not going to do that much, as most cards will not hit for good enough numbers to make a difference. But then I thought about it. What if these new Strides are going to be indeed archetype specific for the new G-Unit archetype, so the keyword archetype, so Brave, Bloom, Time Leap and all those stuff, but their Strides aren't going to be that strong. They're gonna have a good upset stride. Maybe History Maker is identical to Metallica Phoenix, but what's gonna set it apart is that maybe it doesn't have a Chronojet heart restriction, but most importantly, will they have markers on them? Will these Stride cards have markers printed on the card so that older G-Unit archetypes can also have access to these marker builds? Maybe that can be a thing. As then you can build a Time Leap deck that at least have one Force marker enabled. And then you're gonna question yourself, alright, do I want to go into the History Maker Stride, get another Force marker, or do I want to go into a Gear Next, maybe a Chronovisor Heritage and just kill them, but I do not get that marker? Or am I gonna build a complete Time Leap build with one marker Stride, or am I gonna build a standard build with a G-Zone attached to it, or am I gonna make a hybrid build with either normal Strides and these new marker Strides, as well as some newer standard builds and older premium cards? That can make a lot of design options and a lot of deck building options open up completely with one edition. Because I currently feel that the G-Unit archetypes are a little bit lacking behind in most cases. I mean, there are some builds that can still survive. We have seen it with Bermuda Triangle, and Gear Chronicles Zodiac Time Beast can also still perform well in certain scenarios. But overall, the most of the G archetypes are falling way behind these new decks that have access to these Axle markers, Protect markers, and whatever. This new build, this new concept can really ramp up those older builds to a more competitive level with these new decks. I think about Glorious Rain Dragon. The new version can be maybe less superior calling, but because it has an Axle marker on the card itself, it can have one extra tech right at the get-go instead of the whole card deck, the whole previous Glorious Rain itself. Same with History Maker. You can go with the Time Leap build and then have immediately one Force marker underneath your Melem, so it can now become 21. Making it more useful than just the 11k that does nothing. But that's basically all for today. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of the potential G-Units that are going to be picked for each and every clan. And also, what do you guys think of the concept of markers on these specific new Stride cards that will help update and increase the older G keyword archetypes to a more competitive level with these new decks that have been rising ever since the day that Standard and Premium began. But that's basically all for today. I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one.